The idea of the Charter is a voluntary agreement which will help companies on their sustainability journey. So this Charter was in fact begun in 2016 and finally saw the light of day in 2020 or 2021, I'm not exactly sure, but in that period there. And what we did was we anchored around 5 key pillars. So responsible sourcing was one, there's about workplace environment. So the 5 key pillars which everybody needs to think about in terms of having a sustainable business. So it borrows from the experience of the bigger companies and tries to make something workable, useful for the smaller companies. So the origins of the Sustainability Charter was a general awareness that sustainability was a rising issue, not just in our industry, but in all industries. It was also when it was, because the first meetings happened in 2016, and if you go back in time, you'll realize that that is the time that the Green Deal in Europe was being talked about, hadn't really landed in terms of how it would have to be, what we would have to do. But all these discussions about a greener future were very live in that period, and that led to the idea that we really should have a sustainability position for the industry, which was the Charter. 2022, we revisited the Charter because multiple things have changed. So one is the Green Deal is now a reality. So we now know much more clearly what companies and authorities are focused on in terms of the sustainability agenda. The other thing that changed was COVID. So one of our pillars is around the workplace environment and providing a good workplace environment, and notions of that, of course, changed dramatically over the COVID period. The IFRA IOFI Charter was updated in 2022, and then it was officially approved by the IOFI and IFRA boards in the beginning of 2023. The overall shape has remained the same. We still have the same 5 pillars as we had in the original Charter, but there have been refinements. So an example of a refinement was originally we talked about sustainable sourcing of naturals, and now we talk about sustainable sourcing of all our raw materials, naturals and synthetics. Then there are new issues which have come up. So there's a reference now to animal testing, which was not on the original Charter. And we also in the preamble talk about essentiality. This is a new concept which has emerged with the Green Deal, with the risk that if a material, a chemical, is not essential, it should be substituted. And we want to insist on the essentiality of fragrance and flavors. The second sustainability report in June of 2023 follows the first one in 2021. The structure of the report has a qualitative section followed by some quantitative indicators. The qualitative sector looks at the response of the companies to a series of questions linked to the 5 pillars. So again, if we look at some of the key numbers from that period, bearing in mind it's qualitative, what we see is that 80% of the companies, for example, now have or plan a responsible sourcing strategy, which is an increase from 2021. And we see that the companies that have a responsible sourcing strategy in place are using partners like EcoVadis, SEDEX, and so on. So again, I think this gives guidance to the companies who are yet to put in place responsible sourcing strategies, that the big companies and other, even smaller companies, they didn't do it on their own, they did it with somebody, and this is a way that they can also progress. For environmental impact, 80% of the companies either have or plan to put in place a strategy for their environmental impact. And again, we see the same trend with the companies who have got a strategy in place using partners to help them get there. A new question we asked this year was around carbon footprint, because it's raised in importance. And we see that, in fact, 60% of the companies are monitoring their carbon footprint, scope 1 and 2, and some scope 3. Concerning workplace culture, product safety and design, and transparency, the scores were already pretty high in the first report, and they were maintained in the second report. Overall, I think we can say that the fragrance and flavor industry is managed to a high level of safety, care for its employees, and transparency to its customers. A new element of the report this year, trying to bring in this idea of quantitative measure of how we're performing, was to look at the EcoVadis scores of the companies. EcoVadis score is a score across a very broad range of measures of sustainability. Some companies have been using it for some time, and some companies have adopted it more recently. What we see in the, if you like, historic companies who have been evaluated using EcoVadis is that they actually have moved up over the years to platinum level. Platinum level is the top 1% of all companies who submit themselves to an EcoVadis evaluation. And that is companies across the total spectrum of activity. So which is really quite remarkable. What we see in the second group of companies who started later, typically smaller companies, is that they're rising quickly, their score is improving fast, and they are hovering between silver and gold. So I think we can say, based on that EcoVadis measure, that the industry is already quite well positioned on the sustainability front. Two focus areas for the Sustainability Committee in this last period of time have been on carbon footprint and deforestation. On carbon footprint, again, there's strong demand from our customers to also from the companies themselves who've made declarations about how they're going to reduce carbon footprint, is how do you measure it? We've spent a lot of time recently on how do we find a uniform method across the industry, both for Scope 1 and 2 and for Scope 3. That's going to be more of a focus looking forward to the future. And in fact, when we look forward to the future, we'll not only be looking at carbon footprint, but also some emerging issues like water footprint. Deforestation was the second focus area for the committee over this last period of time. Within deforestation, there are a number of crops, commodities, which are of particular focus: palm, soy, cocoa, coffee. We focused on palm. It's the material which is used as derivatives of palm, are used by both the fragrance and the flavor industry. And because of the RSPO, the Roundtable for Sustainable Palm Oil, there are measures that we can tap into. And what we were able to see by aggregating the volumes of the industry players, the main industry players, was that there's been a sharp increase from 2019 to 2022 in the percent of sustainable palm that they have been consuming. Looking forward, the two big themes which we're going to be concerned about are environmental footprint and responsible sourcing, the same in a way, but also different. So in terms of environmental footprinting, not only are we going to look at carbon footprinting and to become more precise and hopefully recommend a method for the industry to use for carbon footprinting, but we're also going to go broader. So we're going to look at water footprinting as well, because we see that this is an emerging area of concern for our customers and for us as companies. In the area of responsible sourcing, we'll continue to track palm, but we'll also look to another crop, likely soy, not yet decided, but it's a promising candidate. We'll also look at other measures, for example, biodiversity. We see that this is a topic which is coming up. There's now a science-based target for nature where it features. There's the CSRD reporting where it features. So we need to learn how to tackle that subject, how it should be reported, and provide information and guidance to the industry.